I want you to just imagine a perfectly cloudless morning sky.
Okay.
It's August 6th, 1945, and below that sky, the city of Hiroshima is waking up, totally unaware that it's about to become, the ultimate dividing line in human history.
Right, the absolute turning point.
Yeah. And if you look closely, you see these incredibly mundane, ordinary details of life, like a woman carrying a bowl of rice for breakfast, steam rising in the air, a kid pausing on a dirt road to fix the straps on their school bag.
Just normal everyday moments.
Exactly. An older man sits on his porch, takes a breath, has his first sip of morning tea. A worker closes the door to his house, heading out for the day.
Right.
And high above all of this, an airplane passes over.
And to anyone looking up, if they even bother to look up, it's just a tiny speck.
Right, just a silver glint against the blue,
Yeah.
and then comes the flash.
Yeah. And I think it's almost impossible for us, sitting here decades later, to truly grasp the cognitive rupture of that specific flash.
Because it wasn't just a big explosion, right?
No, not at all. It wasn't the glow of a localized bomb, and it definitely wasn't like a lightning strike. It was this sudden, blinding illumination that fundamentally shattered our entire structural understanding of reality.
It broke the rules.
It completely broke them. In that single instant, humanity was forced to confront this terrifying revelation. The atom, which, for millennia we had been taught, was this dead, inert, solid, indivisible little building block of matter. It was actually a locked warehouse.
A warehouse of energy.
Exactly. Unimaginably violent, invisible energy.
Which means the illusion of the world as this reliable, solid place was basically vaporized along with the city.
Yeah.
I mean, for centuries, we had this comfort, right? This absolute certainty that reality was dense and predictable, safe.
As long as you understood the mechanical rules, sure.
Right. We thought we were mastering nature, stacking these little atomic bricks to build our bridges, our medicines, our whole civilization. And suddenly, that flash reveals we've been playing with something infinitely deeper.
And way more volatile.
Way more volatile. The solid ground wasn't solid at all. And that brings us to the core of our deep dive today. We're looking at Krystian Defer's book, Evolution Quantoa, or Quantum Evolution.
A phenomenal text.
It really is. Because in Defer's work, that flash isn't just a historical tragedy. It's the exact moment humanity was handed a loaded weapon of infinite power before we had the moral maturity to actually hold it.
Which is the core mission of his whole philosophy, really.
Yeah. And our mission today for you, the listener, is to ask this question. If the hard, obvious world is actually built on invisible probabilities and shifting fields, can you still look in the mirror and view yourself merely as a biological machine?
That's the heavy question.
It is. If we've outgrown the physics of the past, how do we consciously evolve our humanity before our technology completely outpaces our morality? So we're going to map that out, focusing on this concept of Homo sapiens' quantum conscious evolution in a quantum world.
And it is an incredibly ambitious map, I have to say. Defer weaves together so many threads. Standard quantum mechanics, the evolutionary biology of Charles Darwin, the trauma of the atomic age, the shadow of artificial intelligence, and really the fundamental mysteries of human consciousness.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is a lot, which is why before we get swept away by the sheer scale of these ideas, we really have to establish a rigid, non-negotiable boundary for the listener.
Ah, I know where you're going with this, the bullshit test boundary.
Yes, the bullshit test.
Right up front, so nobody thinks we're about to tell them they can, levitate a Honda Civic with their mind if they just think happy thoughts.
Exactly. We need to define exactly what terrain we are walking on here. So in this exploration, we will absolutely be discussing real, verifiable, mathematically rigorous physics.
The real deal.
The real deal. We'll delve into quantum computing, the mechanics of superpositions, qubits, cryptography, and the actual science of quantum teleportation. Those are peer-reviewed scientific realities operating in labs right now. But we are also going to spend a significant amount of time exploring what Defer categorizes as esophysics, or esophysika.
Right.
And this is his own conceptual framework. It's a very deliberate hybrid. He merges philosophical inquiry, spiritual depth, and the metaphorical language of quantum mechanics to articulate this personal vision for human development.
Let me synthesize that just to make sure we're completely grounded.
Go for it.
We are not, and Defer is not submitting esophysics to a scientific journal as a literal mechanical truth of the universe.
Definitely not.
We aren't claiming that human consciousness reaches out and physically rearranges the subatomic particles of your living room furniture.
Far from it. Honestly, treating physics as hard, literal science is a dangerous misunderstanding of the text.
Right.
We have to treat it as a profound philosophical lens. The goal of this deep dive isn't to recruit anyone into believing some new pseudoscientific religion. The goal is to ask harder questions, like what happens to the human mind, to our cultural imagination, and our sense of personal responsibility when the old mechanical certainties of the Newtonian universe just vanish.
How do we adapt, basically?
Exactly. How can we borrow the vocabulary of this strange, counterintuitive physics to better navigate the friction of our own daily lives?
I find that approach incredibly practical, honestly. Using the science that broke our old model of reality as a linguistic tool to rebuild our humanity.
It's a great way to put it.
So let's trace the historical thread that got us to this point. Defer spends a lot of time analyzing the decline of what he calls the old man, Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yes, the old paradigm.
Right. And he makes this really counterintuitive argument that our incredible mastery over the physical atom paradoxically led to a massive existential crisis.
Which sounds backward at first.
Totally. Like, how did getting smarter make us feel emptier?
Well, we have to look at the methodology of that intelligence. Think about how the scientific method has operated for the last few hundred years. It essentially taught us that if you want to understand any complex system, you must disassemble it.
Take it apart.
Right. You break it down into its smallest, most isolated moving parts. It is a philosophy of extreme reductionism.
So under this lens, a clock isn't a clock, it's just gears and springs.
Exactly. And when you apply that to humanity, the human body ceases to be a miracle and becomes a series of mechanical pumps, levers, and chemical reactions.
Just meat and tubes.
Pretty much. The brain is reduced to a biological computer firing electrical impulses. Society is stripped down to a system of competing economic and evolutionary interests.
Everything is just a machine.
Everything. Nature itself is just a massive collection of blind processes that we can predict, exploit, label, and extract resources from.
I think we do have to pause, though, and give credit where credit is due.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that reductionist approach works spectacularly well. I mean, they built the modern world. By breaking the body down into a machine, we invented antibiotics, complex surgical techniques, vaccines.
We saved millions of lives.
Billions, probably. We built global transport networks. We put supercomputers in our pockets. We sent human beings to walk on the dust of the moon.
The triumphs are undeniable.
Yeah, the triumphs of this old man mindset are staggering. We shouldn't diminish them just because we're looking for the next step.
And no one is denying the material benefits. Defer isn't saying science is bad. The issue he points out is the hidden psychological cost of that success.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, science, as a strict method, rightfully says, I will only study what is measurable.
Right, because you need data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a necessary limitation for building a bridge or formulating a drug. You
Right.
have to measure it. The tragedy occurred when that scientific method metastasized into a philosophical ideology.
What we call materialist reductionism.
Yes. That ideology takes a massive, unwarranted leap and declares, if I cannot measure it, it does not exist.
No.
And by reducing the external world to mere mechanisms, we accidentally reduced ourselves to biological machines. We started viewing our own existence as nothing more than the temporary, meaningless byproduct of selfish genes, firing neurons, fluctuating hormones, and random chance.
So the argument is that by solving the mechanics of the outside world, we accidentally convinced ourselves that we are just mechanisms too.
Exactly.
But let me play devil's advocate for a moment, just for the listener who might be skeptical.
Sure.
If understanding our biology and chemistry has doubled the human lifespan and given us air conditioning and the internet, why is Defer framing this as a crisis? Like, isn't understanding the mechanics of our biology enough to build a good, functional life? Why does this materialist view supposedly leave us so hollow?
Because a purely mechanical view of life completely deletes the concept of meaning, and humans simply cannot survive without meaning.
We need a why.
We desperately need a why. Defer answers your exact question by dividing our human experience into two distinct parallel levels of reality, the measurable level and the immeasurable level.
Okay, lay those out for us.
The measurable level is the domain of science. It is everything you can weigh on a scale, count in a spreadsheet, put under a microscope, or track on an fMRI scanner.
The stuff that fits in a lab.
Right. And it's vital for our survival. But the existential crisis comes from our modern obsession with ignoring or invalidating the immeasurable level.
Which is what?
These are the aspects of the human condition that completely evade standard scientific measurement. But they are undeniably profoundly real to the person experiencing them.
I see. So if I'm terrified to walk into a hospital room to say goodbye to a dying parent, you can hook me up to a monitor and measure my heart rate.
Yes, I can measure your BPM.
You can track the adrenaline and cortisol flooding my bloodstream. But you cannot put my courage on a scale.
Exactly.
You can't draw a vial of my blood and isolate a molecule of grief.
And if you try to force those immeasurable experiences into a measurable metric, you completely destroy the context that makes them real.
You lose the humanity of it.
Totally. You can track the dopamine rush of an addiction in the brain, but you cannot find the exact neural coordinate for the moral decision to finally ask for help.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot sequence the DNA of hope. You cannot calculate the physical weight of forgiveness. I mean, how do you measure the dignity of choosing to step forward into the unknown when your entire nervous system is screaming at you to run away?
You can't. The biological markers are measurable, yes. The sweat, the heart rate. But the meaning of that choice,
The moral weight of it.
right, that belongs entirely to the immeasurable level.
And bringing this directly to you, the listener, if you're sitting in your car or walking your dog right now, think about the device you are likely using to hear this.
Your smartphone.
Your smartphone. You have instantaneous access to the sum total of all human knowledge. You have more computational and technological power in your pocket than the most powerful emperors of history had in their entire empires.
It's insane when you think about it.
But does that device give you a compass for how to navigate a betrayal? Does a search engine tell you how to grieve? Does an algorithm tell you what kind of person you ought to become when no one is watching?
Not at all. In fact, it often distracts you from even asking those questions.
And that disconnect is the defining tragedy of the modern era. We possess godlike technological power on the measurable level, yet we are drowning in epidemics of loneliness, clinical anxiety, burnout, and a catastrophic loss of meaning on the immeasurable level.
We have an infinite stream of data, but we are utterly starved for wisdom.
That's exactly it. We successfully mapped the entire human genome, but we lost the map to our own inner lives. We know exactly how we are built, but we have forgotten why we are alive.
Which perfectly transitions us into Defer's next major pillar. Because if standard mechanical biology is brilliant at mapping the body, but entirely useless at mapping our inner immeasurable world, where do we look?
Right, where's the map?
He argues that we have to look beyond Charles Darwin. We need a second type of evolution.
And let's clearly contextualize Darwin before we move past him so we aren't dismissing him.
Yeah, Darwin was a genius.
Darwin's theory of natural selection was an intellectual earthquake of the highest order. It violently removed humanity from the center of this magical narrative and placed us firmly within a continuous, brutal, ancient tree of life.
It grounds us in reality.
It elegantly explains adaptation, random mutation, and environmental pressure. It is the absolute best tool we have to explain why we possess opposable thumbs, binocular vision, and highly complex nervous systems designed to detect threats.
It's the ultimate instruction manual for survival in the jungle.
Exactly.
But it seems Defer is arguing that it falls completely short when you step out of the jungle and into a modern moral dilemma.
That's the limitation of biological evolution. Biology is highly efficient at telling us how our hands evolved over billions of years to grip a heavy stone tool.
Right.
But biology is completely silent on whether you should use that hand to build a shelter for a stranger or to strike them down and take theirs.
Ah, right. The moral
Well,
choice.
When you are faced with a profound moral choice, let's say the choice to take revenge on someone who humiliated you versus the choice to offer them grace.
Or the choice to lie to secure a massive financial profit versus telling the truth at your own severe expense.
Exactly. In those moments, you are operating on a frequency that cannot be fully explained by simple biological survival strategies.
In fact, pure biological evolution would probably tell you to take the money and crush your enemy.
It absolutely would. Survival of the fittest.
Right. You need something entirely different than genetic fitness to explain why a human being would voluntarily sacrifice their own comfort or even their own life for a complete stranger.
And this is exactly where Defer introduces the concept of spiritual evolution.
And we should clarify, he isn't using spiritual in a strictly dogmatic or religious sense here, right?
No, not at all. He is talking about the evolution of human consciousness, the deepening of moral depth, and really the expansion of our capacity to take ultimate responsibility for our actions. Look at a human being. We can absolutely choose to remain purely reactive creatures. We can live our entire lives pushed around by biological impulses, driven by fear, by the desire for status, sexual urges, anger.
Just reacting blindly to whatever the environment throws at us.
That is our default biological setting. Or we can choose to evolve spiritually. We can become conscious. We can recognize our own dark intentions and actively choose the good, even when it is biologically disadvantageous or deeply uncomfortable to do so.
This brings us to a recurring motif in the book that I really want to spend some time unpacking.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Defer uses this phrase as an anchor for spiritual evolution. Every man is the blacksmith of his own fate.
Right.
Now, on the surface, that sounds like a great quote to put on a motivational poster in an office.
Right.
But there's a massive ethical trap hidden inside that phrase, isn't there?
There is a monumental ethical trap. And to be fair, Defer is highly aware of it. If we detach that phrase from profound empathy and an understanding of systemic reality, it becomes incredibly toxic.
Yes, because if you apply the blacksmith concept brutally, it turns into spiritual abuse.
Absolutely.
Imagine looking at someone who is battling a chronic, debilitating autoimmune disease, or someone born into systemic, crushing poverty, or someone suffering from the shattered nervous system of severe childhood trauma.
Yeah.
If you look at them and say, well, the universe is a mirror, and every man is the blacksmith of his own fate, so you must have forged this misery with your negative thoughts, you are committing a profound cruelty.
It's victim blaming of the highest order.
You are implying that victims are always to blame for their own suffering.
Yeah.
That is empirically false, and it is certainly not what Defer is advocating.
It's a grotesque distortion of the idea. Human life is not a blank canvas where you control every variable.
Far from it.
It is a highly complex, often tragic weave of profound personal freedom clashing against harsh, unyielding limitations. We are subject to the random lottery of genetics.
Where you were born, who your parents are.
Yes. We are subject to macroeconomic forces, to the actions of malevolent people, and to natural disasters completely outside of our control.
So what is the mature way to look at it?
The mature, intellectually honest interpretation of the blacksmith concept is not the magical belief that you control everything that happens to you.
Yep.
It is the stoic, psychological realization that, in the face of what happens to you, you maintain the absolute capacity to forge your response. You don't forge the raw iron the universe hands you. You forge what you build out of it.
I want to draw a parallel here because this isn't just mystical, philosophical musing. This map, Defer, is drawing overlays perfectly with the most robust evidence-based modern psychology.
It really does.
Think about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, or the neuroscience of neuroplasticity. Psychology readily admits that you cannot control the random, deeply negative automatic thought that pops into your head.
Right, the trigger happens before you even realize it.
Exactly. If you have trauma, your brain will automatically trigger a threat response. But modern neuroscience tells us that while you can't control the initial spark, you can train your attention.
You can intercept it.
Yes. You can improve your emotional self-regulation. You can learn to insert a tiny wedge of space between the trigger and your reaction.
Yeah.
You pause, you examine the thought, and you consciously choose not to act on it.
And by doing that repeatedly.
By repeatedly choosing a different response, you literally forge new neural pathways in your brain.
Yeah.
You are the blacksmith of your own neural fate.
It is the exact same territory, just described with different dialects. A clinical psychologist talks about maladaptive schemas, cognitive restructuring, and behavioral feedback loops.
Right.
A theologian or a spiritual teacher talks about the purification of the heart, the awakening of the conscience, resisting temptation.
Yeah.
And Defer, looking to provide a new vocabulary for a civilization obsessed with technology, borrows the language of quantum mechanics. He talks about quantum potentials, wave functions, and the conscious collapse of reality.
3 distinct languages, all pointing to the exact same miraculous human capacity.
The ability to interrupt an automatic biological reaction and insert a conscious moral choice.
So how exactly does Defer use the science that shattered our reality, quantum mechanics, to describe this psychological process of choosing our responses?
We have to cross the bridge into that specific quantum language.
The language of the conscious collapse. Let's do it.
Okay, to fully grasp Defer's metaphor, we have to endure a brief conceptual physics lesson regarding the measurement problem.
I promise the listener this is worth it.
It is. It's foundational. So in classical Newtonian physics, the world is like a game of billiards. If you know the exact speed and trajectory of the cue ball, you can perfectly predict where every other ball will go.
Right, it's just math and momentum?
The universe has definite fixed properties, whether you're looking at it or not. But in the 1920s, physicists started looking at the subatomic level, at photons and electrons.
And the rules changed.
Completely. They realized the billiard ball model was entirely wrong down there.
This usually brings up the famous double slit experiment, right?
Exactly. When you fire individual subatomic particles at a barrier with two tiny slits, they don't act like solid little bullets passing through one slit or the other.
Which is what you'd expect a tiny little ball of matter to do.
Right. Instead, they act like a wave passing through both slits simultaneously and interfering with themselves on the other side.
Which is deeply weird.
It's incredibly weird. This led to the discovery that before a quantum system is observed or measured, it does not exist in a single definitive physical state.
Okay, wait, so what state is it in?
It exists in what physicists call a superposition of states. It is a mathematical cloud of all possible realities described by a wave function.
So it's everything all at once.
Essentially, yes. It is only at the exact moment you place a detector there to measure the system, when it interacts with the macroscopic world, that this cloud of possibilities collapses.
The superposition vanishes.
Yes, the particle is forced to pick a single concrete location.
It's the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment brought to life.
Exactly.
Before you open the box to check, the mathematics say the cat is in a superposition of both dead and alive. The act of opening the box, the measurement, forces reality to pick a lane.
Right?
But wait, I want to clarify some terms here because things get murky in pop science. When we say measurement, what is actually causing the collapse? You mentioned things like decoherence and many worlds theory earlier. What do those actually mean in the physics world?
It's a crucial distinction. Mainstream physics has several interpretations. Decoherence suggests that it isn't human consciousness causing the collapse, but rather the quantum system interacting with the messy surrounding environment.
Like stray heat or other atoms?
Or the physical detector itself. The information leaks into the environment and the superposition breaks down.
Okay.
The many worlds interpretation is even wilder. It suggests the wave function never collapses at all. Instead, every time a quantum event happens, the entire universe splits, and every possible outcome actually occurs in a branching multiverse.
That is wild. But okay, so the core takeaway for our purposes is that the vast majority of mainstream academic physicists do not believe that human consciousness has some magical, mystical power to materialize physical reality just by looking at it.
Correct. The human mind does not sit outside the laws of physics dictating the behavior of electrons. But, and this is the exact moment where Defer makes his metaphorical leap into esophysics.
The pivot.
The pivot. He takes this bizarre, mathematically proven, counterintuitive quantum reality where a field of infinite possibilities collapses into a single event and applies it to the immeasurable level of human existence.
Ah.
In his framework, human intention acts as a structural force. The mind is not just a passive biological camera recording a predetermined clockwork universe. The mind is an active, vital participant.
So he frames free will as an elementary force that modifies the state of our personal reality.
Precisely.
Let me ground this for the listener, because the leap from subatomic particles to daily life can feel a bit jarring. Let's look at a real mundane Tuesday morning.
Okay, Tuesday morning.
Imagine your upcoming day, not as a fixed schedule, but as a quantum field of possibilities. Let's say you are walking into the kitchen to have a highly stressful conversation with your partner about your finances.
Very common scenario.
Very common. Before you open your mouth, that conversation exists in a state of superposition. There are dozens of potential versions of how it plays out.
Right.
You could instantly feel attacked, lose your temper, and start screaming. You could get defensive, shut down, and walk out the door. You could deploy passive aggression and give them the silent treatment. Or you could pause, regulate your nervous system, take a breath, and speak calmly and vulnerably.
In Defer's language of esophysics, all of those potentials exist simultaneously in the field of your life. But in the exact moment of choice, your active intention acts as the measurement.
The observation.
Right. Your conscious focus collapses all those swirling, chaotic possibilities into a single, concrete, historical reality. And here's the crucial part. Once that reality collapses, once you choose the calm response over the screaming match, you fundamentally alter the trajectory of the universe going forward. You have permanently set a new baseline of possibilities for the next interaction.
It's such a brilliant, empowering way to frame human agency. And it entirely avoids the toxic trap of manifestation culture.
Yes, thank God.
It's not The Secret, where you just sit on your couch, visualize a Ferrari, and wait for the universe to collapse one into your driveway.
No, that's magical thinking.
Right. This is a profound recognition of the heavy burden of choice. You are standing in a field of potentials every single second of your waking life. The universe is endlessly offering you a menu of reactions, and your intention is the physical mechanism that collapses the menu into reality.
And we desperately need that reframing today. We live in a cultural era that relentlessly tells us we're nothing but deterministic algorithms.
We're told we're victims.
Constantly. We are victims of our neurochemistry. Our reactions are entirely predetermined by our past trauma, our socioeconomic status, or the algorithm feeding us outrage on our phones.
We have no agency.
That's the lie. Defer's use of the quantum metaphor restores a sense of profound human dignity. It says, no, you are an active participant, but it comes with a terrifying caveat. Because you are a participant who collapses reality through your choices, you bear an immense, inescapable moral responsibility for the exact reality you choose to collapse.
Which begs the immediate, highly practical question. If our intention is what causes this metaphorical collapse, how do we train it?
Because it's a muscle.
Right. And let's be honest, most of the time we are stumbling around completely on autopilot. We aren't consciously collapsing anything. We're just reacting blindly to whatever email, traffic jam, or argument is put in front of us.
We are victims of our own lack of focus.
Exactly. So how do we take the steering wheel? This is where Defer offers his toolkit.
Yes, he provides a very specific structure for this, dividing it into mental quantum tools, or MQT, and later technical quantum tools. Let's explore the mental side first.
That's a good.
Defer outlines inner practices designed to train the muscle of intention. And the absolute foundational step before you do anything else is defining highly specific parameters.
I think this is where most self-help or spiritual practices fail right out of the gate.
Oh, without a doubt.
Our intentions are almost always incredibly vague. We wake up on January 1st and say things like, I want more peace in my life, or I want to be a more patient person. And by January 4th, absolutely nothing has changed.
Because a vague, nebulous intention lacks the structural density to collapse a specific reality.
It's like trying to cut a steak with a cloud.
I love that analogy. It is exactly like that. In Defer's MQT system, you have to define and measure the exact parameter you want to change.
Okay, let's take my example of peace.
Right. What does peace actually look like in your measurable physical reality?
How do I quantify it?
Right. Is it achieving a resting heart rate below 70 beats per minute? Is it the literal absence of muscle tension in your jaw when you read the news?
Oh, that's a good one.
Is it the ability to close your laptop and fall asleep without doom scrolling on your phone for an hour? Is it going 7 consecutive days without raising your voice at your children?
You have to anchor the abstract spiritual concept directly to a measurable biological reality.
Exactly. Once you have defined the parameter with that level of granularity, you set a highly specific intention.
Give me an example.
For example, for the next 7 days, whenever I feel the physical heat of anger rising in my chest during a meeting, I will take 3 deep, slow breaths before I utter a single word.
That is highly specific.
That hyper-specific protocol is a mental quantum tool. It doesn't rely on the universe magically solving your anger management issues. It relies on you directing your psychological attention to interrupt the automatic biological reaction.
And by doing so, you exponentially increase the probability that you will collapse a more mature, peaceful outcome. To help maintain these states of mind, Defer also talks about utilizing cognitive prostheses.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it sounds like a term out of a cyberpunk novel, but when you look at it, it's actually one of the most ancient human practices in existence.
It is deeply rooted in our anthropology. A cognitive prosthesis is simply a physical item that acts as a psychological anchor to maintain a specific state of intention.
Now, again, we must rigorously apply our boundary here, right?
Yes, this is the bullshit test.
The physical object itself does not magically store a quantum wave function. A polished crystal is just an arrangement of silicon and oxygen. A wooden bead is just wood.
There is no magic in the object, but human psychology is profoundly symbolic. Our brains are incredibly leaky. We forget our intentions within minutes.
Oh, constantly.
So we use physical objects to direct and sustain our attention outside of our own messy biology.
The most obvious example I can think of is a wedding ring.
That's a perfect example.
A wedding ring is just a loop of metal. It has no intrinsic magical power to prevent a divorce, but it acts as a constant physical cognitive prosthesis for the intention of fidelity, commitment, and love.
Every time you look at it.
Every time you see it or feel it on your finger, it collapses your attention back to your vows. A rosary or a mala bead helps a person anchor their wandering, chaotic mind during meditation or prayer.
Even something as simple as a journal where you write down your daily goals is a prosthesis. It holds your intention in a physical space when your own brain is too exhausted to remember it.
They are physical reminders of the reality you were desperately trying to collapse.
And mastering these smaller tools leads to the most ambitious, overarching concept in Defer's mental toolkit, the Universal Philosopher's Stone, or UKF.
Now, you say Philosopher's Stone, and immediately people think of Harry Potter or, medieval wizards trying to get rich in a dusty laboratory.
And he uses the alchemy metaphor very deliberately. In historical physical alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone was the mythical, elusive substance that could transform base, impure metals like lead, into pure, gleaming gold.
Yeah.
In exophysics, the Universal Philosopher's Stone is obviously not a physical rock. It is a metaphor for the highest, most rigorous level of psychological and spiritual integration a human can achieve.
So it's an internal process.
It is the internal structure of transformation that turns human immaturity into profound consciousness. It is the mechanism that turns random, meaningless suffering into deep structural meaning.
It turns the chaos of a reactive life into the order of an intentional life.
Yes.
I really need to understand how that actually works in practice, though.
Yeah.
How does the UKF operate? What is the psychological mechanism of turning lead into gold?
It operates through a process of profound cognitive reframing and structural alignment. Let's say you suffer a massive, humiliating career failure.
Okay, awful situation.
Very awful. The raw event, the trauma, the shame that is the lid. A person without the UKF simply suffers. They become bitter, they blame their boss, they view themselves as a victim, and the lead poisons them.
It just weighs them down forever.
Right. The UKF is the psychological mechanism of taking that heavy lead and asking, what hidden parameter in my character did this failure expose? Did it expose my arrogance, my lack of preparation, my fragile ego?
Oh, wow. That requires intense self-honesty.
Brutal honesty. By answering that, you extract invaluable data from the trauma. You align your core values, your emotional regulation, and your future actions to ensure you never make that mistake again.
You have literally turned the heavy burden of suffering into the gold of wisdom.
It is a fundamental reorganization of how you relate to the world, but it requires an absolutely pure ethical intention.
Which is where Defer slaps a massive warning label on this entire toolkit. Let's talk about the ethics of intention.
We must, because if you train your intention, if you successfully sharpen your will, your focus, and your ability to collapse reality to your liking, but you completely lack a moral compass, you do not become an evolved human.
What do you become?
You become an incredibly dangerous monster.
A sociopath, basically.
Essentially. If your intention is, I want to use these mental tools to manipulate my partner into doing exactly what I want, or I want to maximize my charisma to defraud my clients, you aren't engaging in spiritual evolution.
You are engaging in sophisticated psychological violence.
Yes. True evolution, the true application of the Universal Philosopher's Stone, requires an intention aimed unequivocally at truth, harmony, and the mutual good of others.
Without strict morality, enhanced mental power is just a catalyst for faster destruction.
Exactly.
And that terrifying warning about power without morality is the perfect thematic bridge. Because while we are sitting here hopefully trying to cultivate our inner mental tools, the outside world is not sitting still.
Far from it.
Science is currently pouring billions of dollars into building the most powerful external technical tools in human history. This brings us to the collision of the inner and outer worlds, the physical reality, and the technical quantum tools, or TQT.
This collision between our internal spiritual maturity and our external technological capability is, without exaggeration, the defining existential challenge of our era.
It's the big boss battle.
It really is. Defer points to the actual hard science currently transitioning from theory to reality. Let's look at the cornerstone. Quantum computers.
Right.
A classical computer, like the laptop or phone you are likely streaming this on, operates on bits. A bit is a binary switch. It is strictly either a 0 or a 1.
Like a light switch. It's either completely off or completely on. There's no in between.
Precisely. But a quantum computer operates on qubits. Because of that bizarre property of superposition we discussed earlier, a qubit does not have to be just 0 or 1.
It can be both.
It can represent 0, 1, or any complex mathematical superposition of those states simultaneously. This isn't just a slightly faster MacBook. This is a fundamental paradigm shift in computation.
What kind of problems does this solve?
For certain types of incredibly complex problems, like simulating the molecular structure of complex proteins for revolutionary new drugs, optimizing global supply chain logistics, or utterly breaking the current encryption methods that protect the world's financial systems, a quantum computer can evaluate vast, multidimensional landscapes of possibilities exponentially faster than the most powerful classical supercomputer on Earth.
It's mind-bending to think about the processing power. And intertwined with that, there's quantum cryptography, which sounds like a plot device from a sci-fi espionage thriller.
It does, but it's actually a beautiful, highly practical application of the measurement problem.
How does it work?
In a quantum cryptography system, sensitive information is transmitted using fragile quantum states. For example, the specific polarization of individual photons of light sent down a fiber optic cable. Because physics dictates that the very act of observing or measuring a quantum system irrevocably alters its state, if a hacker or a spy tries to intercept and eavesdrop on the transmission, their mere observation collapses the delicate quantum state of the photons.
So they literally break the message by looking at it.
Yes. The sender and receiver instantly see the noise in the system. They know immediately that the line has been compromised. It is a communication network where the fundamental laws of physics themselves guarantee that tampering is revealed.
That is incredible. And of course, we have to address the elephant in the room whenever the word quantum is brought up in pop culture.
Teleportation.
Quantum teleportation. Because the minute you say that, every listener immediately imagines Star Trek. They think of the transporter pad. Beam me up, Scotty. And imagine their physical, biological body being dissolved into glowing energy and reappearing instantly on the surface of Mars.
Yes, and we must aggressively clarify that this is not about beaming solid physical matter across space. Sadly, yes. Quantum teleportation relies on a phenomenon Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance, quantum entanglement.
Okay, explain entanglement.
This is where two subatomic particles become so deeply mathematically linked that the state of one instantly dictates the state of the other, regardless of whether they are separated by a few inches or by light years.
So if one spins up, the other instantly spins down.
Exactly. So teleportation, in the strict physics sense, means transferring the exact quantum state, the pure information, from one particle to another distant, entangled particle using a classical communication channel to assist.
I see.
In the process, the original quantum state is destroyed, and an identical state is recreated elsewhere. It is the instantaneous transfer of pure data, not the transportation of human cells or solid bodies.
Okay, so we have qubits, unhackable cryptography, and the teleportation of information. These are incredible, almost magical-sounding technical tools being built in labs right now. But a listener might be wondering, why does Defer include a dense overview of cutting-edge computing in a book that is fundamentally about human spiritual evolution?
Because the existence of these tools highlights a terrifying, potentially fatal gap in our development as a species.
The gap between tech and morality.
Exactly. We are currently building technical quantum tools that manipulate the very fabric of reality at the subatomic level, but are we building the mental quantum tools required to wield them responsibly?
And the answer seems to be no.
Think about a more immediate, highly visible example that Defer points to: artificial intelligence.
Oh, AI is the perfect, inescapable, real-world test case for this entire philosophy.
It really is.
Over the last few years, we have unleashed massive, large language models that can write college-level essays, generate hyper-realistic art and video from a single prompt, analyze billions of medical data points, and mimic human empathy and conversation. The technological power is staggering. But an AI model does not have a soul. It does not possess a conscience. It has no inherent moral framework.
It is pure capability without direction. Technology itself is completely, ruthlessly neutral.
Right.
A steel hammer has no internal desire to either build a hospital or smash a window. It simply multiplies the force of the hand swinging it.
That's a great way to put it.
AI doesn't wake up and decide to cure cancer, nor does it decide to generate a massive, automated, deepfake disinformation campaign to swing a democratic election.
It just does what we tell it to do.
Without a robust moral compass programmed and guarded by humans, these brilliant algorithms inevitably become tools for manipulating human attention, for addicting teenagers to screens to maximize ad revenue, for weaponizing societal outrage.
It's the exact same dynamic as the flash over Hiroshima that we started with. We unlocked the world-breaking power of the atom before we had the moral maturity to realize we shouldn't drop it on a city.
History repeating itself.
Exactly. Now We are unlocking the cognitive power of artificial intelligence, and soon the reality-bending power of quantum computing. And Defer is standing there shouting, "Are we mature enough for this? Have we evolved enough to hold this fire?"
His core urgent message is that the future of humanity does not depend on how powerful our machines become. It depends entirely on how mature the human beings operating those machines become.
Right.
If we continue to develop godlike technical quantum tools without simultaneously developing our mental quantum tools, our ethics, our empathy, our capacity for conscious choice, we're essentially handing a loaded, high-powered machine gun to a toddler and hoping for the best.
So if the gap is that terrifying, how do we grow up? Because we can't mandate global morality overnight.
No, you can't legislate evolution.
We can't just pass a law that makes everyone spiritually evolved. We have to start micro-testing our maturity in our own lives, which brings us to the friction of daily life. Defers this out into 4 distinct arenas of practice. He calls them the 4 laboratories of transformation.
He argues that we can't just sit in a room and theorize about quantum evolution in a vacuum. We have to practice the conscious collapse of reality in the messy, frustrating, unavoidable testing grounds of human existence.
The real world.
The real world. The first laboratory he identifies is health. And here, he focuses intensely on the profound connection between the mind and the body.
Which we often ignore.
Completely. We have a terrible habit in the modern world of treating our bodies like legacy hardware. We keep running dozens of high-stress background applications, chronic anxiety, unexpressed anger, sleep deprivation, and then we act completely shocked when the physical battery drains and the system crashes into an autoimmune disease or a heart attack.
And again, deploying our bullshit boundary. Setting a positive intention does not replace going to a medical doctor.
Absolutely not.
If you fall and fracture your femur, you don't sit on the pavement and meditate on the wave function of your bone. You go to the hospital and get a cast.
Right. Esophysics does not negate biology, but Defer is asking you to take profound, uncompromising responsibility for your half of the equation.
The half you can control.
Yes. Where is your physical body screaming enough before your conscious mind is willing to listen? Are you perpetually flooding your nervous system with cortisol by keeping the 24-hour news cycle running in the background?
That's a huge one for people.
Are you sacrificing your sleep, the most vital biological repair mechanism we have, for the illusion of endless productivity?
So evolution in the health laboratory means what exactly?
Conscious evolution here means recognizing how your mental state is actively collapsing negative probabilities for your physical health, and then taking the unglamorous actions, setting boundaries, eating nutritious food, prioritizing rest, breathing properly to change that state.
The second laboratory is relationships. And I think this is where the theory hits the hardest reality, because this is where our egos live. And our egos hate being told they have to evolve.
Oh, they despise it.
We touched on this briefly earlier, but Defer highlights the massive, subtle danger of spiritual manipulation.
This is perhaps the most common trap for anyone entering self-development. Someone reads a book like Defer's, they learn about intention and collapsing reality, and their secret, unvoiced intention becomes, I am going to use these new tools to make my partner behave exactly the way I want them to.
Trying to hack the other person?
Exactly. They try to use mindfulness to win arguments. That is not evolution. That is just old-fashioned control dressed up in yoga pants and spiritual buzzwords.
Wow.
True evolution in a relationship is entirely, exclusively about taking responsibility for your own reactions.
I want to spend some time breaking down the mechanics of this, because Defer talks about breaking automatic cycles. Let's dissect the classic 15-minute fight loop.
Okay, let's do it.
Every couple on Earth knows exactly what this is. You were having an argument about something trivial, who left the dishes in the sink.
Right, the dishes.
But within 30 seconds, the raw event is buried. One person attacks with a sarcastic comment. The ego of the other person perceives a threat and immediately throws up a defensive shield, withdrawing emotionally.
And then the escalation begins.
Yep. The first person feels ignored, so they escalate and get louder. The second person shuts down completely or fires back a deeply personal insult. 15 minutes in, your heart rates are at 120 beats per minute, you are screaming at each other in the kitchen, and neither of you can even remember the dishes.
You are just running a deeply entrenched biological script of attack and defense.
In the metaphorical language of esophysics, the relationship is continuously collapsing into the exact same destructive historical reality over and over again. The wave function of the relationship is trapped.
It's stuck in a loop.
So how do you get out?
The only way out of that loop, the only way to evolve, is the deployment of the pause.
The pause.
It is that excruciating microsecond where you feel the biological urge to yell your usual defensive line, but instead you deploy a mental quantum tool. You force your mouth to stay shut. You take a breath. You observe the chaos without identifying with it, and you intentionally collapse a completely different possibility.
You change the script,
You drop your armor and say, I'm feeling really hurt and overwhelmed right now, and I don't want to fight with you.
which is terrifying to do.
It takes immense courage, but it shatters the loop. It forces the entire relationship into a new, uncharted dynamic.
It is agonizingly hard to do in the moment when your blood is boiling, but it is incredibly powerful. Moving from the private sphere to the public, the third laboratory is work and creativity. Here, Defer challenges the listener to completely radically redefine their metric for success.
We live in a hyper-capitalist culture that defines success almost entirely by external, measurable metrics. What is your annual revenue? What is your job title? How much market share do you control? How many followers do you have?
All measurable things.
Right. But Defer points out a psychological reality. Success without an underlying foundation of moral values is just an endless, unquenchable hunger.
You can never get enough.
You can achieve absolutely everything on paper, the house, the car, the promotion, and still feel completely devastatingly hollow inside.
Because you mastered the measurable level, but completely starved the immeasurable level. You didn't define the why.
Precisely.
Let's run some hypotheticals on this. A true entrepreneur operating in this quantum evolution framework doesn't sit in a board meeting and merely ask, how can we maximize our quarterly profit margin?
No, they ask a much heavier question. Does our product actually empower human beings, or does it exploit their psychology and addict them?
Right. An artist doesn't look at a blank canvas and ask, what trend will get me the most fame? They ask, what difficult truth needs to be spoken through my art right now?
A high school teacher doesn't just mechanically grade standardized tests. They scan the classroom, look for the student in the back row who is quietly losing faith in their own potential, and they intervene.
It is fundamentally about aligning your daily exhausting labor with a higher moral purpose.
If your work only serves to inflate your own ego or bank account at the expense of others, you are ultimately contributing to the entropy and chaos of the world. But if your work, no matter how humble or grand, serves the growth, truth, and dignity of others, you are actively participating in the spiritual evolution of the entire species.
Which perfectly, seamlessly scales up to the fourth and final laboratory, civilization, or what Defer refers to as the new sphere.
The new sphere is a brilliant conceptual framework. The term was originally developed in the early 20th century by thinkers like the biogeochemist Vladimir Vernadsky and the philosopher-priest Teilhard de Chardin.
Let's define it for people.
Sure. Vernadsky had revolutionized our understanding of the biosphere, the physical layer of biological life wrapping the Earth. He and de Chardin then proposed that evolutionary development had reached a new phase. Above the biosphere, a new layer had formed, the new sphere.
The sphere of thought.
Exactly. It is the collective, interconnected, invisible field of human consciousness, ideas, culture, and shared memory.
And what's fascinating is that when they proposed this, it was a purely philosophical, invisible concept. But today, we have built a literal, physical infrastructure for the new sphere, the internet.
The internet. Social media is the new sphere made visible and measurable.
It is the absolute perfect manifestation of the concept. And Defer uses this to make a vital point about personal responsibility.
Yes. Just as we can violently pollute the physical biosphere with carbon emissions, industrial smog, and microplastics, we can pollute the new sphere.
Psychological pollution.
Exactly. Every single angry tweet you post, every cynical comment you leave under a video, every piece of unverified, emotionally manipulative fake news you share simply because it aligns with your tribal anger.
Every time you choose snark over genuine understanding.
You are pumping toxic psychological waste into the collective mental environment of humanity.
But the exact reverse is also true. And this is where the hope lies. Every time you consciously choose to de-escalate a conflict online, every time you share a piece of art that is true and beautiful, every time you express genuine compassion for a stranger in a comment section, you are acting as a microtransmitter, cleaning the environment.
You are filtering the water.
You have to ask yourself every day, am I feeding the news sphere with outrage and cynicism, or am I feeding it with truth and patience? Your daily, seemingly insignificant choices are the exact microcode shaping the psychological climate of our entire era.
And traversing these four laboratories brings us to a critical juncture for the listener. We have talked about a lot of abstract, high-level concepts. We've used the word quantum repeatedly.
Very repeatedly.
And Defer is acutely, painfully aware that this word has been completely hijacked by the modern wellness industry.
Oh, completely ruined.
Which leads us to the crucial filtering mechanism, the quantum bullshit test and the three bridges.
Yes, we desperately need this, because you can walk into a high-end wellness boutique today and you can buy quantum hydrating face cream. You can go on YouTube and pay $500 for a quantum financial manifestation coaching session.
It's absurd.
The word is used to sell absolutely everything, stripping it of all meaning. So how does the listener protect themselves from pseudo-spiritual grifters and scams while still embracing the genuine psychological growth Defer is actually talking about?
Defer provides a very rigorous, uncompromising three-question framework to evaluate any claim, product, or guru that uses the word quantum. Let's walk through it.
Okay, question 1.
Question 1. Is the person claiming to talk about literal physics, a philosophical metaphor, or a spiritual practice?
Okay, establish the domain.
Right. All three are valid domains of human inquiry, but it is deeply deceptive and intellectually dishonest to mix them without telling your audience. If someone says, quantum teleportation transfers the state of photons, they are safely in the realm of physics. If they say, your conscious choice collapses the possibilities of your day, they are using a philosophical metaphor.
Which is what Defer is doing.
Yes. If they say, your soul is a quantum field returning to the universal source, that is, theology or spirituality, do not let someone pretend their poetic spiritual metaphor is a peer-reviewed physics paper.
Let's role-play this to show the listener how it works. Let's say I find a video online titled, "Listen to this 432 Hz quantum frequency audio to manifest $10,000 into your bank account."
A classic scam.
How does question 2 apply? Question 2 being, are there testable predictions, or is this an inner practice?
Perfect example. The creator of that video is implying a physical causal link that sound waves alter the quantum field to physically materialize currency. If they make a physical claim, you demand the physical test.
Show me the data.
You ask for the double-blind, peer-reviewed study proving that frequency X produces a bank deposit. Of course, they cannot produce it, so the claim fails the test. It is a scam. However, if a therapist is teaching you a mindfulness practice and uses the collapse of possibilities as a metaphor to help you manage anxiety, the test is different. You ask, does this inner practice actually make me a calmer, more responsible, more ethical person? If it does, the practice has immense value, even if the physics metaphor is loose.
And that brings us to question 3, which I think is the most important razor of all. Does this concept connect you to reality, or does it cut you off from it?
This is the ultimate, undeniable test of healthy versus toxic spirituality. Good, mature spirituality fiercely grounds you in the real, painful world.
Give me an example.
If you are physically sick, good spirituality says, go to the best doctor you can find, follow their protocol, and also pray or meditate to keep your mind resilient. If you hurt someone's feelings, good spirituality says, go look them in the eye, apologize, and make amends.
And toxic spirituality.
Bad, toxic spirituality uses quantum buzzwords as an escape hatch from reality. It says, I don't need a doctor. My high-frequency vibes will heal my tumor. Or worse, I don't need to apologize for being cruel to you. You just have a low-vibration energy field and you are attracting my anger.
That is sickening.
That is using pseudoscience to narcissistically escape basic human accountability.
It's the ultimate defense mechanism for the ego. It's not my fault I was doing it. It's a quantum entanglement issue.
No, it's your fault. Go apologize.
Precisely. And by navigating these traps carefully, by applying this rigorous bullshit test, Defer hopes we can finally build what he calls the 3 bridges. This is the overarching architectural goal of his entire philosophical project.
Let's lay out those bridges.
Okay, the first bridge connects physics to existence.
Physics tells us the raw mechanics of how the universe functions. Existence asks the much harder question of how we should live within that mechanical reality.
How so?
Think back to the Renaissance. When Copernicus and Galileo proved the Earth was not the physical center of the solar system, it completely changed our existential view of ourselves. We had to grow up.
Right, we weren't the center of the universe anymore.
Learning about the strange, interconnected, probabilistic nature of the quantum world should similarly expand our imagination about our profound interconnectedness and our potential for change.
The second bridge connects psychology to spirituality.
Psychology gives us the practical, granular mechanics of the mind, how trauma affects the amygdala, how habits form in the basal ganglia, the rules of neuroplasticity.
The wiring.
The wiring. Spirituality gives us the deep wire sense of ultimate purpose, meaning, and calling. When these two disciplines fight, when psychology dismisses the soul or spirituality ignores mental illness, the human being is torn in half.
But when they are bridged,
When they are bridged, you get a mature, robust practice that deeply respects both the biological reality of your nervous system and the immeasurable depth of your soul.
and the third, and given our current era, perhaps the most desperately urgent bridge, connects technology to morality.
Technology constantly, seductively promises us that things will be faster, easier, and more efficient. Morality is the quiet, necessary voice that forces us to stop and ask, faster towards what destination?
Easier for which group of people?
Efficient at what exact human cost? Without a strong bridge connecting our technological prowess to a deep moral framework, our progress is just a blind, terrifying acceleration toward our own destruction.
Which brings us to the end of our journey through this massive map and the final hopeful vision Defer offers in his conclusion. He paints a picture of a new archetype for humanity, the thesis of the book, Homo sapiens quantum.
And we must be clear, this is not a proposal for a new genetically modified biological species.
Right, no X-Men mutations here.
No mutations. It is a developmental psychological archetype. Homo sapiens quantum is the human being who has successfully learned to stand firmly on those three bridges.
Who are they in practice?
It is someone who deeply respects the intellect, the rigorous scientific method, and the measurable level of reality, but absolutely refuses to allow materialism to strip away the empathy, poetry, and meaning of the heart.
They balance both.
Yes. It is a person who embraces the incredible life-saving power of modern technology, but possesses the discipline to never let the algorithm become their master or dictate their values. They understand their biology and their emotions, but they don't worship them as fate.
They keep charge.
They work constantly with intention, but they possess the critical thinking to never confuse their intention with magical thinking.
They are, in a word, awake. They recognize that they are not just passive biological passengers riding on a rock spinning through a cold universe. They realize they are active, vital participants collapsing the wave function of the future every single second with their choices.
It is a beautiful vision, but it is also a highly daunting one because, let's be honest, it is so much easier to remain the old man.
It is so much easier to be cynical.
It is vastly easier to just scroll on your phone for hours, blame the algorithm for your depression, blame your genetics for your temper, blame your childhood for your failures, and whisper to yourself, nothing I do actually matters anyway.
Playing the victim is comfortable.
Very comfortable. Becoming Homo sapiens quantum requires the daily, exhausting, unglamorous, yet exhilarating work of taking total responsibility for your life.
And Defer doesn't just leave us floating with this lofty philosophical ideal. He demands action. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I am giving you, the listener, your direct homework based on the mechanics of this text.
Listen up.
Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, before you check your phone or read the news, I want you to pick one parameter, just one. Do not try to fix your entire life. That is a recipe for failure. Pick peace, or pick truth, or courage, or patience with your kids.
Just one measurable parameter.
And throughout the day, treat that parameter like a rigorous experiment. Track it like a cold, objective scientist, but hold it gently like a spiritual seeker. Notice the exact physiological moments when you act with courage, and notice the moments when you shrink back into fear.
And don't judge yourself brutally when you fail, because you will fail.
Just observe the data of your own reactions.
And then tomorrow night, when you are lying in bed, ask yourself 3 simple structural questions.
Let's hear them.
1. What specific interactions weakened my intention today? 2. What choices strengthened me? And 3. How can I collapse a slightly better choice tomorrow?
That's it. That is the grinding daily practice of conscious evolution.
It sounds incredibly simple when you say it out loud, but the profoundest truths usually are. The difficulty of this map is not in understanding the concepts. The difficulty is having the sheer discipline and courage to walk it every single day.
To leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go back to your day, let's connect this back to the noosphere, that vast collective web of human thought, and back to where we started our journey.
Right.
If every single choice you make, every time you bite your tongue instead of yelling at a barista, every time you choose empathy over snap judgment online, acts as a micro-collapse that feeds directly into the global noosphere, then your private moments aren't private at all.
They ripple out endlessly. They literally change the baseline frequency of the collective human environment.
They are the exact invisible code programming the future of human civilization. We started this deep dive looking at the morning of August 6, 1945, a single flash of unimaginable physical power that changed the world forever, born from our mastery of the measurable atom.
The measurable power.
Right. But what Defer is telling us is that there's a different kind of power, an immeasurable one, sitting quietly inside your own mind right now. Every time you pause, every time you choose the harder, more ethical path, you are generating a different kind of light. So the question isn't whether you have power. The question is, what code are you writing right now? What reality are you going to collapse next?